The Figure a Poem Makes by Robert Frost. Frost begins his essay by distinguishing between the poets of old and modern era. The poets of old were abstractionists, but today poetry is like a toy in the hands of new artists. It is difficult to have poetry of our choice. Sound makes what a poem is. It is like the old in the ore. It should be taken out, discarding the inessential. Mere rules of poetry such as vowels, consonants, punctuations, syntax, words, sentences, and meter are not enough to differentiate one poem from another. What is needed is the subject matter. Frost feels that ancient poets did not score much in spite their accent on meters. The sprung rhythmists, in fact, strain too much. A poem becomes valid only on the basis of its deeper and wider experience. Wildness in tune is the next quality that makes the poem charming. But the problem of the modern poets is to have pure wildness, that is, to be wild with nothing to be wild about. Frost calls the modern poets aberrationists and compares them to a grasshopper that kicks about on a hot afternoon. It is the theme that brings down the wildness of the poem. Free from the constraints of space, time, and relationships, it aids in free movement. A poem begins with delight and ends in wisdom. It is comparable to love, which is full of enthusiasm at the beginning. A poet starts writing with delight. Then there is the impulse. When the first line is written, the poem assumes direction. Lucky events follow, ending up in clarifications. The proper ending of the poem is not foreseen by the poet. It is a trick. A poem does not create tears in a reader or a writer. Similarly, it gives no surprise too. The poet might have written it from the materialistic or from the ethereal heights, that is, clouds. It is the unexpected that gives a twist to the poem. It seems as if the impressions the poet speaks of have not appeared at all when he wrote the poem. Frost compares it to the straight crookedness of a walking stick. Frost then speaks of the wildness of logic. It is better than inconsequence. However, the logic is backward and it has to be spoken in retrospect. It must be a revelation for both the poet and the reader. For this purpose, the theme must be flexible. Frost criticizes the term freedom, which the people boast to have. He says none is free till 16 years, as everyone is compelled to attend a school. Political freedom does not mean anything to him. What he treasures most is the freedom of his material, that is, his body and mind, which he believes to be in utter chaos. The scholars and the artists differ in the manner in which they get their knowledge. Scholars get their knowledge consciously. They are logically thorough and have a definite plan when they acquire knowledge. But the poets have no such projected plan. They get their knowledge not through books but from outside. They do not stick to anything deliberately. Frost recommends the artist to snatch something from previous experience, space, and time, and put to practical use. Past must be linked to the present in a new way. More than once, Frost himself was allured into radicalism. But he refused to become a radical as he wanted to be original. According to Frost, originality and freshness are the true hallmarks of a poem. A poem should run from delight to wisdom. Like a piece of ice on a hot stove, it must start as a solid stuff and then melt. At the same time, it must carry the poet along with it. Then the freshness will remain forever like a metal, that never loses its fragrance. That is the true quality of a poem.